Dragon Ball FighterZ is a game that I avoided playing for a while. Not on purpose, but I truthfully don't spend a lot of time playing fighting games. I'm a platformer adventure game kind of guy, and as you could tell from my Kakarot review, there's a reason why I played that game before this one. But now, after finally getting around to playing it, I'm sorry that it took me so long. FighterZ is such a good fighting game and such a good Dragon Ball game. First off, look at this fucking game. This is my idea of top-notch graphics. An astounding attention to detail is given to the character models, the moves, the explosions, and the character models are so big and the camera is zoomed in enough on them where you can really appreciate all the hard work that developers put into these designs. Without a doubt, this game looks way better than Xenoverse 2 and Kakarot, and perhaps that has something to do with the maps in which you fight are condensed, and by that I mean not as expansive. In fact, you can't really fly in the traditional sense. There is no dedicated fly button, in other words, so I think either the developers were way better with handling graphics, or as I said, the maps have a much smaller simplistic size, giving way to a better canvas for which they could craft these character models on. The fighting mechanics are actually pretty easy to learn, and they're not as demanding as Street Fighter or many other fighting games, which I greatly appreciated. This is a very accessible fighting game, and as someone who is not a fighting game expert by any means, this is extremely welcome on my part. There's even a dedicated move, the Dragon Rush, which can be performed with a mere single shoulder button push to make combos and air juggles way more accessible than they were in any previous fighting game to date as far as I know. The move pool is deep, and the characters have mostly all their signature attacks, and I particularly love the ultimate moves, which fill the screen, and if you finish off an opponent with one, you'll be treated to a destructible environment cutscene. These are so beautifully animated, and damn, does it get me hyped seeing these. I pulled off so many, and I still wanted to see them again and again. They're just that damn cool looking. Plus, you could get different destructible environment cutscenes without the use of an ultimate attack by just hitting a strong enough attack if your opponent's health is low enough that it will send your opponent sailing through a building or even an asteroid. This is actually the first Dragon Ball game to feature this kind of stuff, and it goes without saying that it makes FighterZ special and unique, and really adds to that attention to detail I mentioned before. The hub world has a theme very similar to Canton City in Xenoverse 2, but very much more condensed, extremely so. In fact, some set pieces are basically just here for show, like Kame House and West City, since they're used exclusively for online play. I like the touch of having the World Martial Arts Tournament employees being the ones you talk to in order to select game modes. It would have been nice to have something a bit more spacious and robust like Xenoverse 2, but this style of game really doesn't call for it, so I really can't complain about the simplistic design. Now, of course, the first thing I did when playing this game was dive into the story mode, because if you think I'm going to hit up some online matches, you're out of your fucking mind. Much like Xenoverse 2, I never even touched the online mode because I know my place in the order of gaming, and know that there are people lurking online just waiting to give my ass an old-fashioned red-ass beatdown. So since my ass has no desire to look like IR baboons, I decided to steer clear of that unpleasantness and check out the story mode. And I wasn't disappointed. The story is divided into 3 different arcs, with the first of which needing to be played first in order to unlock the other 2. Each one offering a different spin on a similar tale, all revolving around a Red Ribbon Army wave machine that has sealed away everyone's powers and a new villain, Android 21. The Super Warrior arc is the first of the available stories, and it sees Goku linking up with a soul, which is a really weird premise that kind of confused me at first. The soul is a disembodied being that could go inside someone and restore their fighting abilities. The soul represents you, the player, and when the soul goes inside Goku, he doesn't have control of his mind at first, but when he manages to properly link with the soul by finding himself from deep within himself, he once again gains control of his own mind. Confusing? Well, kind of, but it's probably more confusing having me explain it to you versus you actually hearing the dialogue explaining it. Plus, we never even find out just who these souls belong to or where they come from in any of the 3 story arcs, but I guess it's fine enough, and it gives the heroes a loophole to be able to fight despite the effects of the waves. Goku ends up confronting a restored Android 16 who has been rebuilt thanks to the new villainous Android 21, who is behind the waves and has a massive army of clones of all the Z fighters and villains. Plus, she has used the Namekian Dragon Balls to resurrect Frieza, Cell, Nappa, and the Ginyu Force. Why has she resurrected them, you may ask? Well, Android 21 is modeled after a Majin, and she grows in power by devouring her enemies, so she is looking to not only ingest them, but the Z fighters as well. Strangely enough, almost the entirety of this arc is basically a training mode, which is super weird because this is a decently sized arc and many of the lessons are repeated multiple times. You will be fighting wave after wave of the clones and rescuing your friends. Although this arc is a fantastic way to hone your fighting skills and get used to the game's mechanics, fighting all these clones gets extremely tiresome. This was kind of the problem in Kakarot. How do you have normal enemies in a Dragon Ball game when the heroes are so powerful? In Kakarot, they used the Red Ribbon Army robots, Cybermen, and Frieza's army to act as henchmen to beat up before the bosses, and maybe they could have done that here. I mean, Android 21 and 16 do represent the Red Ribbon Army after all. After fighting my 53rd Yamcha clone, I started to tire of the format of fighting multiple clone teams and then fighting one of the main villains as a boss. But honestly, it's not that bad, because I like the option of being able to assemble different teams, even if you have to gain allies one at a time. But they're always under level, which can be a bit of a pain to level them up. Nevertheless, it's cool that you could assemble any team of 3 you like, and you can swap out damaged characters to let them rest and heal while another fights. Now, you could skip a lot of these clone battles, but you will be giving up precious experience points, which you will need for the fight against Android 21 at the end. So I decided to participate in every one of these fights. Plus, you can trigger certain optional cutscenes by having certain characters on your team. These are always fun, and the developers really had fun with all the different scenarios. Overall, this is probably the most straightforward of all the arcs, with Goku and everyone else giving an energy blast to down Android 21 in the end. There's never been that kind of joint effort of that magnitude in the anime or manga, and it's really cool to see. Now, in the enemy arc, you take control of Frieza after being resurrected by Android 21 using the Namekian Dragon Balls. Android 16 wants Frieza to get stronger and destroy 21, and allows the Link to enter Frieza. Frieza then recruits the other resurrected villains, Cell, Nappa, and the Ginyu Force, with Captain Ginyu being the character you play as, and his attacks include the other Ginyu Force members. Later on, you'll be teaming up with the Z Fighters as well, expanding your choices for your team, and this just overall felt so awesome to be able to team up all these characters to make for some real dream teams. Seeing Goku, Cell, and Frieza combine their blasts to take down Android 21 in the end is one of those fanfiction moments come to life. This is a more satisfying arc than the Super Warrior one, as it makes better use of the villains and not just using them as fodder for Android 21 to absorb. Plus, hearing the interactions between these characters and having the rare moment of these characters working together so begrudgingly is very unique and vastly entertaining. Even the villains don't like each other. Damon Mills is just too good as Frieza. I can't even begin to stress enough how much I love this guy. Rest in peace to Chris Ayres, but Damon Mills is such a good Frieza, and his quips and banter with the rest of the characters is a true highlight. And what's truly impressive is this is Damon Mills' debut as Frieza, even before taking over for Chris Ayres in the Dragon Ball Super anime, and I don't think we could have asked for a better debut.
How dare you mock me! I will terminate you!
The last and final arc is the Android 21 arc, and to me this is the quote-unquote canon arc in my eyes because it seems to be the most fleshed out and the one that contains the most answers. You'll start out by playing as Android 18, who has been kidnapped by Android 16 in order to assist with Android 21 getting rid of the clones. In this story, Android 21 is good, and she is simply having trouble controlling her urges to feast, which if she gave in would turn her evil. So basically 21 is fighting her programming. Android 18 is really fun to play as because her attacks consist of assists from Android 17, and 16 will eventually end up as a playable character too. You'll even finally get to step into the shoes of 21 eventually. 21 will end up splitting into two halves when her hunger rages out of control in a very Majin Buu-like moment, because she is a Majin after all. I really like this dynamic, and we even learned that 16 is actually modeled after 21's son, and we'll even get to see where all the waves are emanating from. This is definitely the most satisfying of all the arcs in terms of story, and you'll end up gaining access to all the fighters from the first arc as you near the final battle with the evil half of Android 21. In the final fight, you'll engage in a one-on-one with the good and evil 21, and when you come out on top, the good 21 makes the ultimate sacrifice to help Goku put her away with a spirit bomb. This definitely is the most emotional and heartfelt of the arcs, and while I feel this is probably the canon arc of the story, it's not my favorite. That has to go to the enemy arc for the sheer fun I had with the character interactions. As far as what I thought of the story mode overall, it's fun, entertaining, and the performances from the voice cast are fun as always, but it's nothing tremendous and doesn't even begin to rival any of the anime arcs or the movies. It's very similar to the Buu saga due to the functioning of 21, and the presence of the Link isn't properly explained, and that bit of the story is just left hanging out there with no real explanation even after completing all three tales. It's kind of sloppy. It's a plot hole that's quite large. Also, the threat of evil clones being the most visible plot element isn't the most exciting. I'd say the plot of Xenoverse 2 was better told and more original. It was a better plot overall with more unpredictability to it, even if Xenoverse 2 could have went further with its concept. But I will say that despite the plot being better in Xenoverse 2, the character interactions are superior in FighterZ. And that's due to the fact that most of the main characters and villains are along for the ride. While in Xenoverse 2, you had mostly the Supreme Kai of Time, the Elder Kai, Trunks, and the silent protagonist you play as, with an assortment of villains that popped up every now and again. 21 is far more present than Mira and Toa as well, so I think I'll go with FighterZ because, damn it, I just love hearing the cast having fun, and I'd rather be entertained more than knowing that a plot is superior. After finishing all these stories, you'll most likely want to go back and try out different character teams to view all the special event cutscenes because they're well worth it. But let's talk about playing some local matches because there's a ton more fun to be had here. Here you can match up any fighters 3-on-3, and you'll be treated to pre-fight and post-fight cutscenes as well as the victory dialogue, and the dialogue will change depending on who your opponent is. I really like this because the pre-fight cutscene is determined by who is going first on your opponent's team, leading to numerous possibilities and reasons for replayability. Now, while the game may throw you a bone by giving you access to a few characters that were not playable in the story mode such as Beerus, Trunks, Hit, and Kid Buu, there's a total of 24 34 characters available in the base game after unlocking everyone through normal game progression. But if you want to further extend your roster, you will need to pony up some dough, because Bandai Namco wants your money. And they're not ashamed to lock almost half the roster behind a pretty steep paywall. 20 characters, in fact. There's 3 packs of DLC for those locked characters, and for the first pack, the FighterZ Pass, it's $34.99 for 8 characters. Now keep in mind, the fucking game itself costs $60. That's more than half the game. Also, keep in mind 2 of those characters contained in this pack are Goku and Vegeta. And you may be asking yourself, but hold the phone, Goku and Vegeta? Didn't I just play through the story mode with these guys? They're even available for local battles. But to this, I say, good sir, those are the Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan Blue forms. The ones in this overpriced pack are the base forms of Goku and Vegeta. Seriously, what the fuck? I get it, there's different dialogue, moves, and animations for these guys, but dear lord, how cheap is it that you're basically getting the same characters? This is some used car salesman nonsense right here, although it's great to have Vegito and Bardock, and the base forms are fun as well. The second pass is $24.99 with 6 characters only, so it makes sense the price is lower. And for me, Kid Goku from GT and Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta are highlights, and the third pass coming in at $19.99 with 5 characters being Ultra Instinct Goku, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Baby, Kefla, and Master Roshi, and just being able to perform the evil containment wave makes this pack worth it in my eyes. Now luckily, I managed to score a sale on the first 2 packs, getting them for half the price, but I paid full price for the third. But if you were to not have a sale, your total prior to tax, mind you, would be a Super Dragon Ball size amount of $79.97. Holy key blast up the ass, Kakarot. That shit is insane. That's more than the whole game. But what's that? There's still one more character to download to pay for? Oh yes, the lab code version of Android 21, who for some reason is not available in any of the packs and must be purchased separately for an additional $4.99. So now you're at $84.96, and dear lord, that is a kick to the good old Dragon Balls. I have to tell you guys, I have talked about this in numerous videos before, but DLC is at times almost as bad as microtransactions, and yet no one really talks about it. Paying $60 used to be enough back in the day to have access to a full game and all that it had to offer. No tricks, no gimmicks, no used car salesman routines, but when video game consoles were able to connect to the internet, it became a business opportunity that many publishers could not resist. At first, it was reasonable, but somewhere along the line, precious content was cut and hacked up by the developers at the behest of their domineering publishers in order to widen their bottom line, leaving the gamer feeling the burn. And this is especially the case in a fighting game, where the core aspect besides the fighting itself is the actual fighters. Xenoverse 2 was way better with the pricing too, so I'm not sure why Bandai Namco felt the need to put the squeeze on gamers here. I would venture a guess that it has to do with this being a more traditional fighting game and was developed to rival Street Fighter and other big name fighting games, and they considered it to be more of a breadwinner for them. But I digress, because FighterZ is a great game in my book, but I felt the need to express my concern with game publishers always taking advantage of the fan base, because when it's a franchise that I'm as passionate about as Dragon Ball and so many others are as well, it kind of pains me, to say the least, to see this happening. The final roster, however, is very impressive, and although not nearly as expansive as the Xenoverse 2 roster, but perhaps that has something to do with the level of detail and high quality of the graphics put into the game. I don't know, I'm not a programmer, so that kind of thing is way beyond my scope. But you have basically all the most popular characters and iterations of characters present, and they're all handled with care and attention to detail. Perhaps the most notable exclusions would be Omega Shenron, Frost, Raditz, Top, Super Boo, Deborah, and Kaba, who are all present in Xenoverse 2. But I do appreciate that FighterZ does give some GT representation in the form of Kid Goku, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and Baby. Once again, original Dragon Ball characters get the shaft. I would have loved to see Mercenary Tao and King Piccolo make appearances, and how funny would it be to see Chi-Chi and Roshi's alter ego, Jackie Chun, get in on the action. But at least we do have some of the movie villains accounted for, with Cooler, Janemba, and 2 versions of Broly, being the one from the Z movies and his super version. But 2 versions of the same character, yet no Super 17, Turles, or Garlic Jr. makes me a little sad. But personal grievances aside, the 44 characters is not a bad overall number to have. I'm at 43 personally, because I really couldn't care less about having a lab coat version of Android 21. It's just not worth an additional $5 in my eyes, so I guess that's all the money Bandai Namco is getting from me for now. Well, there you have it. There's a review of Dragon Ball FighterZ, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw, and hit the dislike button if you fucking hated it. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.